Hello? Is that working? Hi guys, how's it going? Well, welcome to What's Trending. As you just heard, I am currently working in T-Burn's studio at the New York Times, which is the native advertising operation of the New York Times, native advertising, content marketing, all that jazz, which I'll get to a bit later. But as I was approaching this, I actually just took the title is that working? Yes. Took the title I was given here with What's Trending, and I thought I would approach that question in two different ways. First, very directly, of how I think things are trending in the media industry widely, and then just in more detail about things I'm seeing in the industry out there in New York. So first, the overall answer to what's trending, I think, is disruption. This is a really great quote from the Columbia Journalism Review in March. Our news ecosystem has changed more dramatically in the past 5 years than perhaps at any time in the past 500 years. That might be a little hyperbolic, but I kind of don't think it is, to be honest with you. I think that the pace at which we're changing is beyond anything we've ever dealt with, so it's a whole new ballgame out there. And this disruption matters to everyone in media, not just advertisers, not just marketers. If your job in any way whatsoever, in fact, involves getting content in front of human beings, like eyeballs, right, that this applies to you. So can you raise your hand if you think you're one of these things? Journalist, brand marketer, someone in advertising? It's like most. Okay, cool. Are you a social influencer? But yeah, I mean, it really runs the gamut, all of these changes and how they affect everything. And the Times is absolutely no exception to all of this. This disruption matters to our newsroom, since our core mission is to deliver Times journalism to the public. It matters to our consumer business, of course, our subscribers, and it absolutely matters to advertising. It's really why I have a job, frankly. It's why T-Burn Studio exists. But the good news is, I'm sure you guys know this, disruption leads to innovation, generally, if you're doing it right. So the reason you see things like NYT Now from the New York Times, or more digital subscriptions as opposed to print, and T-Burn Studio where I work, all of those, I believe, are the product of innovation due to disruption. Now, why is all of this happening? Because the answer is very complex, to be sure, but does anyone have any, why is all of this happening? If you'd put it in one word. That's right. There you go. A little more nuanced, my answer, but yeah, because technology continues to advance at an ever-increasing pace, and of course, then so does the way people consume content via that technology. So for a moment, I want to take a step back, just to kind of illustrate this point. The first year that the New York Times produced a newspaper, and they did it kind of this way, right? The newsstand. And so for the next 150 years, of the total 164 years, our core business was not disrupted, although we did add international distribution at one point, until 1980, when we were like, oh, home delivery too. That was huge, right? That was an entire new distribution means for us. And everyone kind of got the newspaper, right? Like the big news was on page A1, super clear. For 150 years, the reader journey was really clear. It was very linear. It starts here, it goes through, you have your different sections, you go outside, you buy a paper. No one went right to like B15, right? So here's obviously a very famous example. July 1969, men are walking on the moon. And then in 1996, the internet happened before 1996, but to the New York Times, the internet happened in 1996, and we established a website, of course, because we had to do that, and it was a whole new way of creating, promoting, publishing stories. And that was a huge deal. And this was just one new platform. So imagine, the moon landing story on the web. That wasn't that hard, right? That's haha, like I put the moon landing story, on a mock of our homepage here. It would be on the homepage, the lead photo, bigger text, that sort of thing. But the problem is the world didn't slow down in 1996 in terms of tech innovation, right? We got mobile web, and we had to make an app for iOS, and then we had to do the Twitter thing, and then the tablet thing, and then we had Facebook, and then we had NYT Now, and then we've got a cooking app and Times Video, and I actually can't keep up with that. So you get the idea. It's very overwhelming, so much that it couldn't fit it all on the slide. So while this does make sense to us, like I said, how would you really hear about the moon landing if it happened today? Probably like this, right? Or even like this. But you get the idea. It's overwhelming, and this is the way we live now. We're not going to figure out the number of platforms we need to understand to deliver our journalism or our marketing. It's going to consistently change all the time, so you have to change the conversation over to how do we keep up with constant change. Keep up is almost the wrong word. How do we just constantly adapt like this chameleon here? So, again, this affects anyone and everyone in the content business, like I said, which for purposes of this discussion, I already touched on this. Oops. Sorry. There we go. Applies to journalism, advertising, and paid content like subscriptions. But my thing right now is advertising. It's probably the one I understand the best. So let's take a look at the overall media spends in the US since 1980. So the black line is overall, which I'm showing to demonstrate that overall spending isn't dropping, but you see some pretty significant trends down there at the bottom. So I want to break it out for a second. From 1980 to 2000, everything was looking fantastic, especially for our friends in green there, the newspapers. Even for radio, magazines, everything was going pretty well. And digital, as you can see, is kind of starting to creep up over out of home there. But of course, in 2000, everything changed. So if we just look at the past 20 years here, got kind of messed up, right? I think that we can all agree, of course, that there was a recession right in the middle of a lot of this. In fact, if I go back to the overall one, you can see a dip when that happens, a bit of a plateau. But still, I mean, it doesn't explain all of these different things that happen, right? And technology does, of course. But it's just a really complex ecosystem, right? So many factors involved. So I thought we'd take a look back again, but not that far. Back to when the internet started. I don't know if you guys ever saw this internet, but this is what the internet looked like. And it was not great. Well, it was for the time. We thought it was great. But you could look in the arts section to read about humanities or photography and architecture, extra business economy. Anyway, you get the idea. I remember my dad actually had the internet at his office. He had Netscape, and it was really cool when I could go and check the weather. It was very exciting. And then we all got it at home, actually. Home internet, big deal. Suddenly we could go online. I have a commercial from 1995 that I hope everyone will enjoy.
Every day, America Online is making it easier for people to live, work, and play.
So important.
Hey, Dan, ready for the game? I'm just finishing up here with my new kayaking friends.
Kayaking friends on your computer?
Yeah, I just got America Online.
Sounds great. Listen, I can't go to the game today.
What?
I've got to send something for my mom's birthday. It's tomorrow. I'll then book plane tickets for our trip next week, and my kids got to go to the library to look up dinosaurs.
Hey, we can take care of all that before we go.
Yeah, right.
Oh, with America Online.
America Online can do all that?
Yeah. How about sending your mom some nice flowers? All you do is click on Marketplace. We place an order.
Call now for America Online, a new way to use your computer to communicate, have fun, and get instant news and information.
Flowers are sent. Now let's access the online travel service.
How long have you had this?
About a week. And it's so easy. All you do is point and click.
But how does it work?
All you need is a computer and a regular phone line. They send you the software and give you 10 free hours to check it out.
Call now for your free America Online Startup Kit and get free software and 10 free online hours. It's everything you need to get online.
Plane tickets are ordered. Now, let's look up dinosaurs. What do you think? Compton's Encyclopedia or National Geographic?
You get all that with America Online?
Yeah, you can read Business Week online before it hits the newsstand.
Update your stock portfolio every 15 minutes with PC Quote. You can even play fantasy football.
Call now for 10 free hours of America Online and get instant access to the worlds of sports, finance, computing, and entertainment.
Here come the dinosaurs. I saved you a trip to the library.
That's great.
Yeah, downloading is easy, too. You know, I can even send email on the internet. And, of course, there's my personal favorite, live chat. That's how I met my new kayaking buddies. We'll check that out later, after the game.
So how do you get America Online?
Oh, well, that's easy, too. You just call their 800 number.
I got to check this out.
Call 1-800-614-3434 now for your free America Online Startup Kit with free software and 10 free online hours. It's everything you need to get online. So call 1-800-614-3434.
So, couple of things here. First of all, is that working? Can you guys hear me? No? Yes? Yeah? Okay, great. Couple of things about that. First of all, you had to call to get the internet, which is funny. you were charged by the hour, which is probably funnier, but it was so slow you really wouldn't want to spend more than an hour at a time. Frankly, it was frustrating. So anyway, and you're glued to your desktop, right? You're kind of just sitting there going on all of these different things. So 10 hours made sense for a while. Obviously, that has gone by the wayside. I think the next big thing that really changed how we consume media are laptops, which makes sense. These were laptops for a while. Then we got laptops that aren't terrible. And I think this is really kind of when the game changed as well, because now you can be watching TV, you can bring your laptop over, this whole idea of second screen, of course, I'm sure you've all heard of that. But I really do think that's when we started to look at more than one medium at once, like with frequency. So I think I mentioned this before, internet speeds were horrible, right? Once those weren't terrible, well, now I want to be on the internet all the time. And now I have Facebook, so I can stalk my friends all the time. That happened when I was in college, actually, my freshman year of college. And we were, all of a sudden, everyone was on their laptops all the time on Facebook. So then, of course, the iPhone, right? And then, more importantly, the cheaper, better iPhone and data speeds that aren't terrible. For some reason, I wanted to go through this again, but I'm not going to. So anyway, that's my overview, basically, of disruption from the 90s on and kind of mapping it against the media buying market. And I think, again, I'm going to get into more granular detail, but I think it is important to understand what's going on in media at all times. It's always going to be disruption. So the question really becomes, what is being disrupted now? Is it the way we consume video? Is it the way we listen to audio, right? Podcast versus radio, all that stuff. It really is a question of what is being disrupted at this point in time. So, part 2, 6 things to watch. 6 things I would watch, the 6 things I kind of am paying attention to. They're the questions I get the most. They're the things I think are going to affect the media landscape a lot in the coming year. Number 1, this is pretty obvious, but the future is mobile and VR maybe. So, at least at the Times, our traffic at this point is over half mobile of our unique users. And this is a Comscore graph over time. So it was like last year, about a year and a half ago, that the number of people online on mobile versus desktop, overtook one the other. So this is a mobile world we're living in now. It has been for a while. Not only that, I'm not going to go through this whole chart, but we're now spending more time on mobile. If you look at the last one there, you can see mobile growing immensely as desktop is shrinking. And VR, actually, which I don't have a slide for, but I did throw that in there. VR is something we're doing a lot at the Times. We're experimenting with both on the advertising side and the editorial side. And I think the reason it's coming to light more now is that Google put out Google Cardboard, and now suddenly we all have these smartphones that can essentially serve as the mechanism for delivering that content. So even innovations like VR, that's all because of mobile. And when I look at business models, this is actually from the New York Times Our Path Forward report, which is our first 2 million subscribers, including our newspaper subscribers, grew up with the Times, on their kitchen table, right? They remember the newspaper, they remember reading it in the morning. The next million, we understand, must be fought for and won on their phones. Like, the war is not the war. The courting, I suppose, is now on the phone instead of the paper. We kind of skipped over desktop, to be honest with you, in terms of how we're looking at subscribers, because the Times is more of a habit, right? It's a ritual, it's a habit. So it's less of a destination, more of a habit, if that makes sense. But it makes sense that, of course, mobile is a huge opportunity for us. Second thing, platforms continue to upend absolutely everything, including media dollars, and a lot of them. This is just a chart I pulled from eMarketer earlier, but the amount of money that advertisers are spending on these platforms, just direct ad dollars going to Facebook, ad dollars that are not going to the Times or NBC or whatever, is immense. And if you look at 2012 versus 2015, that's more than doubled. It's crazy. So not only is Facebook and all of these, of course, changing the way we consume content, changing the way we talk to our friends and family, changing the way publishers need to publish their content. We now publish at the Times a lot of articles directly onto Facebook via instant articles. Same thing with Apple News. But actually, the advertising landscape is significantly changing. People don't talk about this a ton, but I think it's incredibly significant. Number 3, it's about video. So things are about to get weird for TV. TV isn't really suffering the way print is, as I'm sure you saw before. It's still a pretty steady increase, with the overall increase, but things are getting weird for TV. And we're starting to look at video just as video and not split up TV versus digital digital video when we're looking at these trends, because digital media is predicted to overtake TV as the #1 media category. I mean, you can read the quote yourself, but a lot of that is because of this. Millennials are watching less traditional TV than online video, like because of online video. I'd rather go watch Netflix, right? I'm a millennial, I'm an old millennial. I'd rather go watch Netflix than watch TV, and that's increasingly the case. It's pretty self-evident, but this is kind of like all over the news right now for whatever reason. It has been all year. Again, same thing. This is happening on platforms as well. So I'm sure you guys know this, but Facebook has become more of a video platform than even YouTube. So again, like a lot of those video buys that would normally go on TV or even like pre-roll on a publisher site, they're going to these platforms because that's where the video views are. And this Snapchat is pretty interesting. This just happened in March, I want to say, yeah. Snapchat video traffic is now higher than Facebook too. So I don't know what we do with that from an advertising perspective. How many of you guys are on Snapchat? Oh my God. So all of you. Me too. I wasn't not into it at first, but I've warmed up to it, and I feel like what publishers are doing on there is actually really incredible, which, off the record, please, the Wall Street Journal's Snapchat I think is actually pretty good. It does a good job explaining really complex issues in this sort of animated videos before you read the article. We need to do stuff like that, I know. But so this is interesting, right? This is interesting from a media perspective, of course, because of all of you raising your hands immediately. And you are the future, naturally. But also, like, how do we monetize that, right? So in the meantime, advertisers, as they're shifting where their video dollars are going, right, a lot of them are buying digital video in sort of the way they used to do in TV in the upfronts. Does anyone know what new fronts are? Anyone? Well, it's an upfront for digital, so new front. And it's an opportunity for us to sort of show our programming slate to advertisers in hopes of an upfront buy, the same way we would for television. So I'm actually going to show you guys a sizzle reel, an off-the-record sizzle reel. We're going to launch a slate of original programming at the Times to try to capture some of these dollars, these new front dollars. So this is, I believe, what we showed clients, I want to say at the end of last year for what's coming up. So.
Sometimes what left to do is save you from yourself. For a society to function, the people have to make decisions.
What's the sound when a bomb is falling?
I don't think the Islamic State is as bad as everyone says.
We hear the sizzle and everything is good.
Nothing like this is planned to ever happen again.
So we're really looking at a gateway to hundreds of worlds.
I feel like you put that song and most people are going to feel something from it.
We're literally always trying to find something that you haven't heard before.
Actually, it was super weird for me at first. I was like, this is wrong. Blueberry's like, no, this is right. It's wrong, right? I just had to get used to it.
took a little pattern and created it into a whole different sound, but it still has the elements of some human thing, a warmth in the track.
So, whether or not you are interested in those shows, how many of you guys saw the Bieber video, by the way? Really? Interesting. In any case, as I imagine you can tell, though, like this is not the way the Times is used to marketing to advertisers. I think that's the biggest takeaway here. It's not the way the Times is used to looking at content. It's not the way the Times is used to talking about upcoming content as if it were shows again. So I think, this is the New York Times looking at how ad buying is going for sure, but also just how content consumption is evolving. And how do we apply our journalism, our standards, all of that to this format. It's not changing the quality with which you report on the news, but it's changing the approach we take. So number 4 of 6, almost there. The agency landscape is crazy. How many of you guys watch Mad Men? Okay, good. Good, because I have like 4 slides. So this is the way I understand the Mad Men era of advertising. So you have your brand marketer, the people who work at the brand, the clients. You have the creative agency and a media agency. I believe Sterling Cooper Draper Price was both. And then you have your publisher, right? The New York Times, the network, NBC, any print, any TV, out of home, billboards, right? Radio, that sort of thing. So here are the sort of players just to kind of reinforce, right? This is the clients, Conrad Hilton, I believe. And here are the account guys. They're like the ad sales guys. You all know Don Draper, he's creative. Peggy, also creative. I would call her creative strategy, obviously, because I want to be like Peggy. Harry Crane was sort of the media agent, the one-man media agency of Mad Men, which is interesting. Now, obviously, these are generally separated functions. I've worked with a few agencies that are both, but those are few and far between. Because the media landscape obviously got increasingly complicated. I don't know if you guys remember when they got the computer, which, yeah, it's animated, right? Because that's how complex media buying was becoming. It wasn't a matter of where do I put my ad in the paper? It wasn't just that, right? It's increasingly complicated and needs increasingly complicated skills and sometimes own entire agencies. So I just really like this meme, but obviously, even from that, oh, we're getting a computer, that to here is light years behind. And the number of agencies the landscape now is almost impossible to describe. So you guys remember this simple one before. I tried to look for a good diagram of the media landscape, and I could not find one. I don't know if you've seen the Lumascape. This is the mobile Lumascape. But don't bother to look too closely, honestly. It's instructive, I suppose, but it's crazy. The number of different players in the market. And if you want, Google Lumascape, it's interesting. But it's become so complex that we can't even make a graph about it, which I think is of note. And I think it's going to become even more complex as publishers like the New York Times, with T Brand Studio are making their own content, sort of, I don't want to say taking away that agency's business, but doing similar work, producing custom creative the way an agency would. In that vein, number 5. Branded content continues to grow. I'm sure you all know this. This is what I've done for my entire career. Not entire career, past 5 years, as long as it's kind of been a thing at scale. The spending continues to go up with kind of no end in sight. I've been saying frequently, because it's a tweetable thing to say, and that works, that we need to start thinking about our branded content strategies as mobile first, right? We need to start evolving them that way. We need to think about them as social first, mobile first. How do we tell short video stories, like Snapchat, as opposed to just thinking in 30-second spots or long-form video? Point being, do we need to evolve it? Yes, but it's still growing like crazy with no end in sight. And just for the record, because I know people use different terms here, content marketing, to me, doesn't necessarily have to be native advertising. Native advertising. Do you guys know the difference? Like, is this something you've come across? Anybody? Is there a difference? What's the difference? Anybody? You guys? No difference? About the same? I would tend to agree. This is a bit misleading that it should be like way, the Venn diagram, the middle should be really heavy, but I do think something like Amex OpenForm, right, that lives on Amex's own site is actually not native advertising because it's not done through a publisher or network. It's actually done by the brand themselves. So again, few and far between, but that's a good example. Native advertising, I consider Google AdWords native advertising because it's in the format of what you're there to look for, right? But it's not content. I think we can all agree. So, but what I do, what T-Brand Studio does, and what I'm about to show you, what I always talk about is the intersection between. So, why is content marketing so popular in the first place? I kind of said how it's still growing, but I think the reason is really because media is now completely just infinite and attention isn't. I think we all know that. I think that's pretty obvious at this point. This is something I said like 6 months ago. I actually feel like it's stale at this point, but it's true. I mean, because this is what your media audience used to look like, right? They're not looking at anything else, right? They're all in the same place, so happy. They probably had 5 channels. And this is sort of the captive audience model, right? And that depended on finite options. Like I said, 5 channels, 1 screen, no means to control or block advertising. You can't really tune it out, look at your phone. You don't have a phone, right? Or smartphone. So here's where we are now. Like it or not, we have unlimited on-demand options. We have third screens. Talking about second screens is almost passé at this point. Constant communication via text, WhatsApp, social, all that jazz. These constantly demand our attention and splinter it. So, like I said, I mean, this is all the same message. It's all getting crazy. But one thing hasn't changed at all, and that's that we have to earn our audience. Good advertising earns its audience. Good advertising is a Super Bowl commercial that you actually want to go see. It's something you want to go watch on YouTube. And this, I usually talk about this as the golden rule of content marketing, which is earn your audience. And I'm going to show you another video, which is how T-Brand Studio does it. So this is my group at the New York Times. This is just the sizzle reel of our last year of content.
Literally, we were told over and over it could not be done.
I get a real visceral, emotional excitement when I see something really beautiful.
It's that personal attention to detail that really helps differentiate us from any other screen type.
It's not a buzzword, it's not a program, it's really what we do. It's everything we do.
The most incredible thing that's happened to me is that it is my version of a fairy tale.
A lot of love, a lot of dedication has been put into ensuring that your experience is everything you want it to be, as well as what we are proud of.
That's the difference between a good brand and a great brand.
It's a great sense of gratification at the end of the day that you got it done.
So, that was a little salesy, I recognize, but it is, I think, a good way to just show how we approach content from a splashy perspective. My group, Creative Strategy, we're tasked with coming up with the ideas, basically, for these posts. The positioning, the ideas. We'll write briefs, to help sell them through, to help kick off content production. Then we have an amazing team of editors and designers and programmers and all kinds of things that bring these ideas to life once they're sold through to a client. So broadly about T-Brand Studio, this is how we talk about it just ourselves, in case you're curious. I think you guys all understand what native advertising is, and that Sizzle Reel does a pretty good job of like jazz handsing. But I like to say we're a group of brand storytellers, and we're modeled after and guided by the New York Times newsroom and its values. What that means is that every T-Brand story utilizes the same approach, rigor, and ethical guideposts to bring brand stories to life. So that sounds awesome. It can be challenging in a good way, because I've worked at other branded content operations. They just don't have, there's no looming like, will this upset the newsroom? Is this something that might not work against our newsroom content? If a lobbyist wants us to do a piece about oil, like, is that something we're willing to do, right? These are all very difficult questions, because the whole point of T-Brand is to just sort of raise the bar on what we think native advertising is. To go in a bit more detail about what my team does, just seemed like the right thing to do here. How do we find the right idea, the right story? Like, how do we approach that topic? What tools do we use? So I have this sort of approach. I just came up with this last week, so bear with me. But step one is the idea. You guys might have heard that before, but like, we like to say the idea is at the intersection of a brand truth and a cultural truth. So like, what does the brand want to say? What do people actually want to hear? Which we as the New York Times should know, like through insights and an understanding of our content. So T-Brand's job is to find the idea in the middle of that. Then we talk about the story, because an idea isn't compelling by itself. The challenge is finding the story that expresses the idea in a way that appeals to the reader. So I like to talk about this in two different ways. There's sort of the descriptive, gonna draw a conclusion bit of it all, and then the expressive, draw a picture of it. It's getting a bit in the weeds, but those to me break down into a journalistic approach versus a creative approach, because we can do a really beautiful brand video that isn't necessarily journalistic. It's just, the Cole Haan ballerina, black and white, lovely video. So I like to talk about it like, are we going to take a journalistic approach or a creative approach? And here, not that you can see, but I've mapped it to newsroom content and then past content T-Brand Studio does. So this makes it really, it's very helpful to have this sort of common language for clients, but also for within my team. If someone's struggling with an idea for, say, Tylenol, this happened the other day, I was like, what, Johnson & Johnson, I believe, where do you think it's going, right? So, well, I think it's definitely a journalistic approach, but like, I don't know if we want to like, you get my points. But we decided to take like a more explanatory approach. I want to say about vaccines or something, but in any case, it's good for us to ideate around. And then finally, like, what are the tools we're going to employ to tell the story? Like, a video is not an idea. Narrative is not an idea. Like, doing an interactive is not an idea. Those are executional points. So once we realize the angle and what the idea, the story, and the angle, then we go and look to see what tools we want to build with. So, speaking of which, I think this only makes sense to follow. Career paths in media are disrupted as well, right? T-Brand Studio is a thing that didn't exist 2 years ago. Content marketing at scale, the way we think of it, didn't exist 5 years ago. So my personal career path was a bit weird. I actually started out in law, and then I did some nonprofit consulting, and I fell into this influencer marketing and content strategy thing at Federated Media, which is essentially selling media on blogs, but also having some bloggers do content marketing. This is like 2010, 2011. Then I went to the Huffington Post to start their native advertising operation with a very talented group, the HuffPost Partner Studio. So that's the first time I really worked like at a publisher doing real native stuff. And then I actually went back to Federated for a hot minute because they realized, and this is pretty interesting, that influencers really didn't mean bloggers anymore. They realized a little bit too late, but and really the influencers are on social, right? That's where influencers are. The person who's the master pinner is far more important than the blogger at this point, especially from an advertising perspective. So after all that, I finally came to the New York Times to do marketing, creative strategy, whatever you want to call it. But I show this because this actually sort of follows the evolution of how these things worked. Like HuffPost Partner Studio was very much, didn't look at any other ad products that AOL sold, right? HuffPost is owned by AOL. It was literally just like, what are the native ads? What are the articles we want to do? That's all we ever saw of the pitch. Very like segmented. But now with the Times, it's like we're doing these big holistic programs, and it really is more like full-on marketing. So And actually, yesterday I had everybody on my team jump in our Slack channel. I don't know if you guys use Slack, but Slack is amazing. And I asked them where everybody went to college, which I kind of knew, but what they studied, more importantly, which all over the map, frankly, because to do our job, you have to be able to come up with creative ideas. So a lot of people have writing backgrounds or journalism backgrounds or some kind of creative design background. But a lot of them, went to school for media. I believe our newest hire is from FIT over there. She's amazing. She came from Kara and Mindshare, and now she's with us at the Times. But I also have, I went to Dartmouth, so one of those is me. But the other one was someone I knew from college who works for me now, who, theater major with a minor in Arabic and spent a year in Morocco. So she doesn't use that directly at the Times, but she's a super creative thinker and performer. She's great with clients. It really works out. So this isn't to say media education isn't important. It absolutely is. But when we're looking to create a team at a place like T. Brown Studio, which really is this amalgam of media knowledge and creative knowledge and sort of maker knowledge, right? The understanding on how to produce something, we try to balance it out as much as possible. And this, I feel really works out well. Same thing. This is where they all came from. I think that's everybody. Not me, so HuffPost and FM, but you get the idea. Time, of course, Vayner, BBDO, The Body Shop, didn't know about that. Golan Wright PR, The Onion, and ShareThrough, so a couple of publishers up there too. And I will say this, in the past, someone in my position at the Times probably would have worked at Condé or Time, full stop. So we're really taking a different approach to how we're doing this. It's not just integrated marketing for a publisher. It's not just agency services or agency thinking. It's really this holistic, how are we thinking about the entire campaign? And that's it.